them through the best programs and give them the best training. And sometimes these accidents are unavoidable. But we do want to extend our deepest condolences to the district and to the family of Mr. Josh Molina. A moment of silence. Thank you.
We need to stop at this stupid. Just remember, it's all now.
Okay, we have just a reminder of the emergency exits. If you will just look to my right and my left, and certainly to the back, if there, in the event there's an emergency, please make sure you take note to exit calmly and safely. Also a reminder, this is a smoke-free school district. There's no smoking permitted in the building or anywhere on the school grounds. So we appreciate your cooperation. First item on the agenda is a personnel consent. Item number C1, Dr. Gianni.
Yes, thank you. Administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in Schedule C1 and C2.
Okay, we have a motion necessary for approval of C1 and C2. Motion by Dr. Gianni, seconded by Dr. Griffin. I apologize. And seconded by Mr. Pacini. All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, any opposed? No opposed. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so before we move on to the purpose of the special meeting, I would like to announce two of the approvals the Board of Education just did. First is for the Director of Guidance and Counseling Programs here in the district. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Justin Levy. And the second item, or the second position, is for the position of Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, and Accountability here in the district. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Marvin Small. Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gianni.
Okay, and the special meeting this evening is here to discuss the final results of Franklin Long testing. The comprehensive testing and Franklin Long has been completed, as you all know. Earlier today, the final results of the report was submitted by digital. And this evening, the results of this environmental investigation will be presented by the district's consultant. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Glenn Bushwinter.
It's going to take hours. Look at that stack.
That's it.
Wow.
That's his defense.
Come on.
Scott, are you can you hear me?
Are you kidding?
So I'm here tonight to present to you the final report of the investigation that was ordered by the Board of Education at last July's meeting. Is that better?
I'm just going to ask the back if you can hear. Just, yeah. Maybe perhaps take the microphone out of the.
Well, I'm using a hand.
Oh, you have.
Fine.
I see. Okay. There we go.
I tend to walk around a lot and use the hands.
And if he's, Scott, should we shut this mic off if he's using the lapel clip? Can you do that from up there?
It's already muted.
Okay.
Are we good? Can everybody hear? All right, so we will begin with some brief introductory comments about the some background on the building, starting with the fact that
We already know this.
Frankie Long is a school of approximately 100,000 square feet. It's been built in 3 phases on property that was undeveloped since the late 1890s.
I just have to stop you for a moment. To the young lady that's taping right now, the flash is right going out. So if you could just tape without the flash, it was on. It's not on right now, but it was. Okay? Thank you.
Ooh.
I'm sorry. You can continue.
That's okay. So the building was built in 3 phases. The original building was built in 1957. It's about half the square footage of the basement. Its construction is such that it sits on top of a full basement crawl space system. That's important for reasons we'll talk about later. The second phase of construction was in 1970. It was an addition to the northwest and southeast corners of the building. It is construction that is slab on grade. And in 2008, a small addition of 4,300 square feet was added to the northeast side, also slab on grade. The building is heated primarily through the use of unit ventilators. Unit ventilators would be a type of system that would be common in like a hotel room, similar to something that Hampton or something like that, where you have a unit that controls, in this case, strictly heat and ventilation. It is recirculating the air within space and pulling a small percentage of outside air in to provide fresh air. Within Frank P. Long, that system is controlled by a building management system, a computerized system intended to gain energy efficiency and to provide precision and control over the energy consumption within the building. Additionally, in a number of locations, including the main office, library, etc., you have a number of rooftop units that provide, in addition to heating and ventilation, air conditioning into those spaces as well. Franklin Long is about 0.67 miles from the Brookhaven Landfill in the southern direction, about 0.57 miles from the 27, and about a quarter mile from Station Road. It is comprised of the 4th and 5th grade at the South Country Central School District, of which in 2016-17, 675 students were taught by staff and teachers and staff of 105. It's worth noting that since 1993, the building has been the subject of at least 6 health-based or environmental-based investigations by both public and private entities. The focus of our investigation at the time that the board charged us with the responsibility was to assess both the air component of the building and the groundwater. The air components assessed included asbestos, radon, mold, total particulates not otherwise regulated, metals, hydrogen sulfide, VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. When in the groundwater, beneath the surface of the school, we assessed metals, volatile and semi-volatile organic compounds, radionuclides, metals, and pesticides. To the extent that we could, we assessed the building as both a standalone entity, if you will, as well as a building that might be subject to potential contamination from external influences. To give you a bit of the schedule that was used to perform this testing, asbestos sampling was performed on July 11th, as was mold, particulate on the 18th and 19th, metals on the 18th and 19th, hydrogen sulfide on the 20th and 21st, radon sampling from the 18th through the 20th, that's because that's a 48-hour test, and VOC sampling performed on July 21st. The groundwater wells were installed on July 19th and 20th, and sampling of groundwater was performed on July 31st. I've said in the past that this investigation was extremely comprehensive, as evidenced by the number of samples and locations in which that sampling was performed. There were a total of 69 samples across all parameters, except for radon, we'll talk about that in a second, including 65 of those samples collected inside the building, and an additional 4 collected outside the building. Radon is collected somewhat differently. in that the attention is drawn more towards the area where the foundation contacts the subsurface. And so a total of 25 radon samples were collected, of which 20 were in the old portion of the building within the basement, and an additional 5 were collected in the rear of the building in the areas listed there on the right. One of the geographic concerns of interest is the Brookhaven Landfill. I'll give you just a little bit of background on that.
I think we all
Brookhaven
know.
Landfill was originally constructed, construction began in 1972. It was one of the first artificially lined landfills in the country, meaning that a PVC liner was used to protect groundwater, at least in theory, from the contents that would be placed within the landfill, 100 mil liner. It consists of 3 modules that, to some degree, overlap. Those modules are comprised of cells. Cells 1 through 4 opened in 1974. Cell 5 opened in 1996. And Cell 6 opened in 2003. In 1993, a closure program was commenced. And in 1993, cells 1, 2, and 3 were capped. In 1997, cell 4 was capped. In 2005, cell 5 was closed, meaning that it no longer accepted any material, and it has since been partially capped. And the last active cell on the north side, or the back side of the mountain as we look at it from the south here, is still operation with 8 subcells, including 2 that are under construction. It is the plan of the town of Brookhaven to have 70% of the landfill capped by the end of 2017. Currently, 63% of it is capped. Another influence on the air quality around and within Frank P. Long to be considered is Sunrise Highway. You all know that it's one of the longer highways on Long Island. It extends from Brooklyn to Montauk, about 120 miles. At the point that it passes closest to Frank P. Long, it's a 4-lane divided highway with 2
Now all of a
service
sudden
roads.
it's the cars.
And in 2008, that the New York State Department of Transportation
That's what they say.
tells us that at the station road intersection, almost 75,000 vehicles per day
Oh.
pass by.
Oh,
And
shoot.
I didn't know that. I found that to be a high
What?
number.
Oh.
Maybe you do too.
But we're gonna put an
Yeah.
ambulance
Yeah,
down.
yeah. Right. Traffic. Sorry, I can't keep that. Please.
Another issue to be evaluated is groundwater, and before we can do that, we have
I
to
love Wendy.
understand groundwater flow direction, which is generally in the area of Frank P. Long, northwest to southeast. Groundwater contamination originally identified in 1980 by the USGS, resulting from the Brookhaven Landfill, and more recently quantified by DeBerk and Bartolucci, a private engineering firm on the island who was a consultant to the town of Brookhaven, identified that plume to be approximately 3,000 feet east of Frank P. Long, besides the western boundary of the plume. 3,000 feet east of Frank P. Long, continuing southeast away from the building. During the time of our sampling, measurements of all weather data were undertaken for 2 reasons. One, to assess the conditions while we performed our sampling, as well as in cooperation with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, who was performing additional sampling of hydrogen sulfide using a device we'll talk about later called an autolog. The device currently resides in the parking lot of Frank P. Long. We'll talk about what it does later there. Over 90% of the time when we were performing our sampling, the wind was from a direction that one would consider from the landfill, including on Friday the 21st when our outside samples were collected from the period of around 2 o'clock until 3:07 or so. We discussed this at the last meeting briefly, but the method of measurement that we use for each of the parameters is described here. It's kind of boring, but it's worth pointing out that asbestos was evaluated to the clearance standard used to ensure that an asbestos response action, usually removal, is completed appropriately. Radon was evaluated using the standard liquid simulation vial that is the standard within the industry for assessing short-term radon exposure. Mold, we use 4-trap aerosols, also an industry standard. Total particulate was assessed using a 9-500 method for particulates not otherwise regulated. Those particles would include everything but asbestos and silica. A whole suite of metals were analyzed using standard 9-ish method 7300, hydrogen sulfide by OSHA 1008, and VOCs analyzed using supercanister methods and the EPA TO15 criteria for that analysis, and that is as per New York State DEC and DOH guidelines. Groundwater was assessed using dedicated polyethylene balers and analyzed to New York State DEC Part 375 parameters. Those parameters include, like I mentioned earlier, VOCs and SVOCs, metals, pesticides, herbicides, PCBs, and radionuclides. There's no other questions about a lot of this background. I'm going to dive right now into the results of the sampling. Start with asbestos. Like I mentioned earlier, a total of 69 samples, 65 within the building and 4 outside were collected. They were compared to the air clearance level of 70 structures per square millimeter, as well as the OSHA permissible exposure limit of 0.15 per cc. In all samples, there were no asbestos fibers detected in any of those samples. Radon samples were evaluated to the US EPA guidance document that describes 3 categories of results: those that are less than 2 picocuries per liter, those between 2 and 4, and those greater than 4. Radon is the second largest cause of lung cancer in the United States behind smoking, and the sensitivities to radon are strict. It's worth noting that all samples at Frank D. Long were less than 2 picocuries. All samples were taken both indoors and outdoors. The purpose of the outdoor sample is to provide comparison to the indoor sample counts, both in concentration and constituents. Outdoor mold samples ranged as high as 20,800 spores per cubic meter. The highest value that we saw indoors was 8,200. Most samples averaged less than 2,000 spores per cubic meter. All were below the outdoor average samples. The standard for assessment of particulate, the OSHA permissible exposure limit is 15 milligrams per cubic meter. Our samples were all less than 2 milligrams per cubic meter. It's worth noting with regards to particulate, to just remind the board that the sampling was performed after the school year was over, and prior to the school building having been summer cleaned. It was a bit messy. We halted all summer cleaning activities for about 2 weeks. And the building was under a particular particulate stress, but the results were still significantly lower than the PEO. A host of metals were evaluated. Metals were evaluated to their relevant OSHA PELs. Those vary depending upon the metal in question. Regardless, it's a somewhat easy comparison. All the samples were not detected to their detection limit for each of those listed metals. Next parameter was hydrogen sulfide, evaluated to 2 parameters. There exist 2 parameters that are applied in somewhat similar circumstances. One is the OSHA permissible exposure limit, which is 20 parts per million, as well as the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists threshold limit value of 10 parts per million. All samples for hydrogen sulfide that were collected in and outside the building were none detected. I'm not going to go back to the discussion I brought up earlier about the weather logging that we performed, that the district installed to monitor the weather. That was done in conjunction with the installation of a New York State DEC device called a Motolog that has been sampling hydrogen sulfide since June 23rd. The DEC was kind enough to share with us that through August 2nd, that was the last time prior to this meeting, they had downloaded data from that device, that there were no hourly averages that exceeded the DEC ambient air standard for hydrogen sulfide. Volatile organic compounds were collected both inside and outside with respect to the samples collected inside. All samples were below the guidelines of the 2003 New York State DEC study of VOCs in air or fuel oil heated homes, except for room 3, which is identified as location 4, where there was a detection of 2.24 micrograms per cubic meter of trichloroethane, commonly referred to as TCE, or the dry cleaning compound. After we received that result, we investigated the room further to find that a number of suspect items existed within the room that were removed. Those items included things like a substantial quantity of magic markers and other cleaning chemicals.
Give me a break. Okay, yeah, that's
Air
what it is.
fresheners, large quantity of air fresheners, and other items. Those items were removed, the room was ventilated, and retested on August 3rd, and the value for TCE was undetected.
That's a joke.
With regards to the outside samples collected in the 4 areas around the cardinal points of the building, all VOC samples collected were below the New York State DEC short-term guideline concentrations. Groundwater samples were collected and analyzed and compared to the New York State DEC ambient water quality standards. These standards exist for the comparison and for the assessment of potable water for the purposes of consumption. So if an individual is to install a private well on their property for the purposes of consumption, they would have to meet these standards. All samples met those standards except for a PCB detected in the 3rd monitoring well, which is the westernmost well of the 3 that was installed. The result was 0.21 micrograms per cubic meter versus the standard of 0.09. And I can tell you that as of literally 4 o'clock this afternoon, discussion is ongoing about whether or not the DEC will determine whether any further action is required with respect to that result. I would tell you that past experience would say that it's probably not going to require further action, at least on the part of the school. Any questions about any of the results that were obtained? If not, we will move into the discussion part of the report.
Wait a second. What, you want to ask questions now or wait for the conclusion? I think we'll wait until you're finished with the entire report.
Okay.
There'll be an opportunity for the public to ask questions.
So we're going to begin the discussion portion by saying, first of all, obviously the results of the sampling indicate a building that's currently free of elevated levels of contaminants in a sense, a systemic level. That the results are similar to background levels compared to similar schools. I reinforced that remark by calling your attention to Figure 7 that shows that data. That data was also submitted to the New York State Department of Health for their corroboration in that determination, and they concurred in an email received yesterday. We'll move now to some of the more specific concerns that have been raised throughout this process, and we'll start first with benzene. It's worth noting that there were no outdoor levels of benzene detected during this past investigation. But I'd like to take the board back to June 2016, where there was one sample collected outdoors that had a value of 0.45 micrograms per cubic meter in comparison to the state DEC SCCSD value, that short-term guideline concentration value of 1,300 micrograms per cubic meter. Now, to put this in context a little bit, in 2005, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation conducted a study across New York State 1990 to 2003, where they, on a regular and daily basis, evaluated the concentrations of benzene 5 distinct environments. Those environments include Whiteface Mountain, the borough of Brooklyn, Troy, Lackawanna, which was considered industrial, and Niagara Falls, not the falls themselves, but the downtown district city of Niagara Falls. That study reached the conclusion that the average benzene concentration in those areas ranged from 0.43 at the base of Whiteface Mountain, which is in the heart of the Adirondacks, to 1.6 micrograms per cubic meter in Brooklyn. This is important because the DEC uses their assessment of benzene obtained values not only to compare to SGCs or other guideline values, but because they've come to recognize that a background level benzene exists in New York State, whether we like it or not. And in that study, that background level was attributed to vehicle use of gasoline.
Okay.
Hence the reference earlier to
That's the problem.
traffic on Sunrise Highway.
Such
Now, it's
bullshit.
important to note that that study from 1990 through 2003 saw a 50% decrease in the background
If any of
levels
those places are next to a landfill, then maybe I will take what they say.
Gasoline was not benzene additives. But there's more to be said about benzene. There's been some conjecture brought before the board about whether or not the detection of benzene within the surrounding neighborhoods of the Brookhaven Lab can be attributed, Brookhaven Landfill can be attributed to the landfill.
Uh-oh.
In fact, I recall sitting here and hearing that there was the use of the term fingerprinting to identify that contaminant as such.
Where's Adrienne?
It's worth pointing out, it's contained within the report, 2 correspondences from the Department of Environmental Conservation, one dated November 21st, 2016, one dated as recently as August 10th of this year, where the DEC stated in summary that any consistent patterns that would indicate there is any one specific dominant outdoor source of VOCs, there is not, other than those related to vehicular traffic.
It's a lie, a lie, a lie. They got it on tape.
It's worth pointing out that the first letter, November 21st, was directed to the Citizens Campaign for the Environment. The second letter addressed to Dr. Gianni here at Subcommittee. In that second letter, the regional director of the DEC also said it is worth mentioning the department shared with the Citizens Campaign for the Environment its findings on ambient air quality in the Brookhaven area. And in a detailed letter dated November 21st, 2016, I urge you to carefully read that letter, which does not include the benzene in the area is predominantly from the landfill. In fact, they further
Adrienne's going to say
describe it as
something.
related to the background levels that we discussed earlier. It's also worth pointing out that some conjecture or concern has been made about whether or not 1-hour sampling is adequate. Both the DEC and the DOH reviewed our sampling both from the historical sampling since 2015 as well as the results obtained from this July sampling, and they had no criticism of the 1-hour sample. And further, to address the issue of whether or not these samples should be compared to the SGC or the agency, there were no exceedances whether you compare them to either or both in the July 2013 sampling.
Yeah, what about all the other sampling before that?
Another aspect to be discussed as part of a health study investigation, and this is placed
Oh
here
my
not
God.
to
They're doing the absence thing.
ridicule or to even reach any sort of subjective conclusion, other than to look for statistical differences in
I can't believe, cannot believe they're showing this.
Study performed by
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
While it's interesting perhaps to see that Frank P. Long ranked lowest for staff absences and third lowest for student absences, it's much more important to see that Frank P. Long is not an outlier.
How dare they do that?
So again, I
How dare they do
stress
that?
quite strongly that this is not kind of an irony necessarily.
Ugh.
It's strictly meant to show
Oh my God.
that the absenteeism does not outlie the other buildings in the district.
Unbelievable.
And we'll talk about how
They just don't want this school.
Direction it's going in. Quiet.
There was also a New York State Department of Health review not only of the samples that we just mentioned regarding VOCs and benzene, but of the entire investigation and sample results. A copy of that letter is contained within your report. worthwhile to note that the following remarks were made. In general, the results of the indoor air samples were unremarkable, and that the comparison used by EnviroScience is consistent with our approach to evaluating such data, and that overall the results of the indoor air sampling that you provided were typical of indoor environments. That letter was addressed back to the Sussex County Department of Health in response to their request to review the data that we provided them. There's been much discussion about low-level VOCs and the lack of a health-based understanding about their effects on the general population. And while that's true, the reason is pretty straightforward. There are currently, under the EPA TO15 method, 97 VOCs of concern. That list changes occasionally as candidate compounds are added. Currently it's around 97. And it's important to understand that each VOC is evaluated based on its own toxicity, and that toxicity is obviously related to dose and concentration. When you take into consideration all the possible combinations of 97 VOCs, it yields a ridiculously large number with 151 places after the decimal. So there's really no way to quantify every possible combination of VOCs assessed in a total comprehensive way. But that said, there are other avenues of assessment. One is the California EPA. While California considers themselves to be cutting edge, and they are, and have lots of regulations, I would just say that their State Department of Health is right there with them in competency and in establishing criteria.
Yeah, I don't think
California, the EPA there has established what they call 3 different acute 8-hour and chronic reference exposure levels for 35 of the most toxic volatile organic compounds. So that's pretty good, because in California that means that if you do an investigation like the one that was performed within Frank P. Long, and you exceed those values, by law you're required to undertake some sort of remediation. It's worth noting that all the VOC values contained in our investigation were significantly lower than those 35 VOC levels, and that table is provided to you in the report. But we can take it a step further. I mentioned at the last board meeting in the presentation that that there exists within the design community, the AIA, American Institute of Architects, an organization called the U.S. Green Building Design Council. And they basically provide third-party verification of green buildings through a very rigorous assessment of a number of different parameters, including assessment of air quality. And so the lead organization, LEED, within the U.S. Green Building Council, took the California standards for those 35 VOCs and went a step further. They assigned a standard of 500 micrograms per cubic meter as a total VOC concentration. In parentheses, I'll just say for a second, 200 for healthcare facilities. So if you will, a report card is compiled, assessing a building upon its completion, of which one of the assessments is air quality, and it's expected that a LEED certified building would have a total VOC concentration of less than 500 micrograms per cubic meter. So within the study that was performed in July, of all the interior spaces at Frank P. Long, the highest total VOC, which is the sum of all VOCs present in the samples that were collected in each individual location, the sum of which the maximum was 182.62. So without sounding anything more than factual about it, the air quality within Frank P. Long, within the parameter of indoor air quality, meets LEED standards, for which there's only one building in Suffolk County that currently meets that design standard as a school, and that's the Hampton Bays.
Oh, so we are the only ones that meet that standard. Isn't that amazing?
I mentioned earlier in our presentation a number of investigations that occurred in the past at Frank P. Long. I'd just like to summarize them to refresh memory for those that might not have been here. Number one, in 1989, there was a poor work practice of a cesspool company that resulted in an exposure to students and staff of sulfuric acid vapors that at best could be described as resulting in respiratory irritation and for many much worse. That was a singular outcome, but it was something that the BTA on the commission meeting with them pointed out as something that happened in the past that was of concern to them. In 1997, the topic of indoor air quality became a district-wide issue. Dr. Joe Larry at the time as superintendent, founded an indoor air quality task force comprised of many different individuals, including local Department of Health officials, state assemblyman was on that committee, Department of Health, physicians, consultants, and parents, staff, teachers, and administrators. The outcome of that task force was the adoption of a Board of Education policy that was intended to develop and implement practices and strategies to improve indoor air quality district-wide, and that board policy was adopted from the records that the district has kept on July 9th, 1997, although I've seen either a reiteration of that board policy or ultimate adoption as late as 2012. I'll leave it to the district to decide when that happened, but within that board policy are 5 target objectives, and those objectives are included in your copy of your report. Most importantly, in touching back on the idea of performing health surveys and assessing attendance records as a tool in assessing the health of a particular building, in 2005, the New York State Department of Health compiled a fact sheet addressing 2 concerns. The first is a concern regarding attendance, that there were an increase in health symptoms related to odor exposure from the Brookhaven Landfill. That assessment went back to actually 1994, and the report provided through 2005 indicated no significant difference in the pattern of
From
health-based symptoms
1992.
that frankly
That's the last
compared
time
to
they
other
were here. 92.
buildings within the district.
92. The last time they checked this out.
Secondly, on that fact sheet was a cancer incidence investigation, the result of which or the purpose of which was to investigate cancer incidents in and around the neighborhood of Frank B. Long. The results of that were twofold. One of the take-home messages is presented here. Results of the cancer incidence study found that overall, the numbers of cancers diagnosed during the years studied, 1983 to 92, among males, females, children, and young adults, were not statistically significantly different from the numbers expected. And again, this is from New York State BOH.
How big was the landfill back in 1992? Probably double.
Mercedes died in about 1996.
Really?
So
1992?
I'll just say in summary that all the parameters assessed during the time of sampling were considered normal for a school building in Suffolk County, and in cooperation and review with the Department of Health and DEC in New York State, they found the results of the sampling performed this July as
When you don't know when.
Now, are there any questions?
Okay, just to explain to the public, the board will go through its questions now. The public will have an opportunity to either make a statement or ask a question. If you want to do one or the other, you do have to fill out a card just indicating your desire to speak. And please fill out that card if you haven't done so already with the clerk that's immediately to my left. And then we'll get you up to either make a statement or ask a question. Okay? I would ask that you give courtesy to the board and the questions at this time. We're going through it for the very first time with you. And the questions will now just be limited to the board, but you'll have your opportunity later to follow. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to start. Okay, Dr. Griffin?
Just a quick clarification. When you talk about the total VOCs, the number was 182.62. So what you're saying is that what you found in Frank P, all the VOCs together?
The slide that says 186 was an illustration of the location with the highest concentration of total VOCs.
So that the
The
worst.
preponderance of the locations were in the towns.
Okay, so one in the most VOC room.
The reason I got the book is because if you have the report, I believe it's table 7C. It shows the total VOCs by location. I also think it's hard for you to put a table 7C.
Is that a sun report?
Try to show it to you right here.
Look at that report. How big it is.
So what I'm looking at is basically numbers nowhere near the 182, but like 20 something, 63, 89, C1140. But the thing that stuck out to me is you said that healthcare facilities need cannot be above 200, and Frank P. Long didn't exceed 200.
That's right.
But the highest level is 500 for a typical building.
For a building that's attempting to achieve platinum LEED status, the concentration would have to be less than 500 micrograms per cubic meter of total VOC.
I can hear you.
I'll say it again, I think I'm gonna. For platinum LEED certification.
Who cares about
from
platinum
the US
LEED
Marine
certification?
Council
I don't care about
for indoor air quality parameters, all samples had to be less than 500 total VOCs micrograms per cubic meter.
And then, so just to clarify, the LEED, L-E-E-D, who is that, and
So
how do
LEED
they
is
come
a-
up with their numbers?
And why do we
LEED
care?
is a program of the US Marine Building Council, established by a number, about 40 or so different industry organizations to promote green construction in the 1990s. You might have heard of the use of things like low VOC building components. That's a LEED-based philosophy. And like I said, there are about 14 or so different objectives to be met to be a building that's certified LEED, and there are 4 certifications within LEED, highest being platinum. One of those 14 parameters is an assessment of air quality post-construction, pre-occupancy, with a total VOC concentration of less than 500 micrograms per cubic meter.
And when you collected this data, this was done as you're doing, or was there a special like LEED evaluation to get to that, or is it something you do after you've collected your data?
The LEED process starts with an owner or a school district or whomever charging their architect with the design of a building that will meet LEED criteria.
It has nothing to do
And
with
that
us.
philosophy is followed through design, construction, and operation. Another LEED criteria, for instance, would be energy efficiency. So you'd be using products that are energy efficient, LED light bulbs, heating technologies, a geothermal, that type of thing, to achieve a building that has met this green standard.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Hunt?
I can use
The
it.
TCE, now that was tested and the levels were higher than they should have been, and then it was retested because there were markers and.
Well, there were a number
Found
of, that's right, there were a number of materials found in the room that were suspicious, I'll just say, that could have contributed, that would be defined as something outside what one would normally find in a classroom. They were removed, the room was vented, and then retested the next day, and found to be nothing there.
Okay, thank you.
Like markers and air fresheners, you know what I'm saying?
I would also reiterate that the concentration was, I believe, 2.2 to a standard of 2.0. This is negatively higher.
Nobody else has a question? Really?
Just a clarification on the information for well 3.
You want me to just present again? Sure. So 3 wells were installed about 150 feet north of the building, in an east-west orientation. Within your book, there's a figure that describes their locations. Those wells and those locations were chosen to be upgrading of the groundwater flow direction that would impact the building. Those 3 wells are labeled 1, 2, 3 from right to left. Well number 3, the only elevated concentration was the presence of one particular PCB at a fairly negligible elevated level. So that data was shown to the DEC. It's not for us really to say to a client what they can or cannot do once we are presented an elevated level. They need to consult with the DEC on that. Experience will tell us that they will likely not ask for any additional action on the part of the school district. They may undertake their own action to determine whether or not this is coming from off-site someplace, because there would be no location on-site that would suspiciously shoot PCBs on the school property.
Really?
And it's worth noting that the groundwater in those locations was 35 feet. So.
What are typical sources of PCBs?
Well, there's many. Those would be things like lubricating oils, caulks, glazes, many manufacturing processes from as early as the 1920s up until the 1980s used PCBs in their industrial processes. Unfortunately, there are still PCBs even among our neighborhoods. Those large trash can-looking things that you see on a telephone pole are transformers that are being phased out, but some still have PCBs in them, and they explode into loud noise, and so that's not good for our neighborhoods. So those both can have PCBs in them.
So my question was partially answered in your most recent answer, but could you just expand on if there's anything else to add about the discussion with the DEC in relationship to the PCBs? If remediation would be necessary, you said you have the information over to them, waiting for their discussion. Could you just expand on that just a little bit more?
Our point of contact primarily for this entire investigation has been the solid waste groups at DEC, but groundwater issues like this go to the water engineering people, and so he forwarded it to them. They're reviewing the data, and they'll determine whether or not they would want remediation undertaken, which is not likely, or whether they would just disregard it or perform additional testing, upgrading, and like I said, off-site, because currently there's nothing on the property of Frankie Long that would be a source to introduce PCBs into groundwater 35 feet below the surface.
So it's likely the DEC will say no action is necessary or
No action on the part of it.
testing.
Yes. But they would be groundwater related. We had no instance of PCBs in the school, so we're certainly not a different issue.
You also, did you have any questions? You also spoke to the summer cleaning that was halted in Frankie Long while the testing took place. And then you make mention of the task force that was put together in 1997 for improving indoor air quality. Can you speak to some of the remediation, if you're aware of it, that has taken place already to ensure that the systems are well maintained, the cleaning is done the way it should be done to an adequate level? Can you speak to that at all?
This goes
or
back-
if there's room for improvement?
This goes back to, well, so this goes back to our original 2015 investigation that was conducted to assess mold within the building. It was done building-wide. We identified, I believe, 4 locations that required specialized cleaning, and in that investigation also identified mechanical hygiene practices related to the maintenance of the unit ventilators, specifically preventative maintenance issues that would include filter changes and hygiene of the system. So as a result of that, which I believe predates your current facilities director, the district undertook a massive assessment of all unit ventilators district-wide and came up with a preventative maintenance program that addresses that issue. So my understanding that filters, for instance, now meet the twice per year changing schedule that ASHRAE suggests for ventilators that just provide heat. They don't run, for air conditioning in the summertime. And other than that, as part of our December 2016 investigation, most famously referred to as a report that recommends additional testing in the winter months.
That was
There was
2015.
a recommendation made to the district to evaluate a number, and to make improvements in a number of areas. One was in the continued filter maintenance area, where we continued to identify that improvement needed to be made, and that was accomplished then. Two was professional development of custodial staff as it relates to the operation and performance of the building management system. That's the computer system that controls all the heating and ventilation and air conditioning units within the buildings of the district. And the third recommendation was to bring in this case, South Country uses cardinal controls to assess the feedback that those units were giving to the system to ensure that they were calibrated properly, because that had not been done for a period of about 10 years. So in other words, to make sure your thermostat is reading 72 when it's 72 and not 75.
That calibration is done internally with our custodial staff or?
No, you brought in cardinal control
Cardinal.
to assess a lot of different parameters within that system that provide feedback to custodial staff to make adjustments with regards to comfort and energy efficiency. So, to finish the point, that process took about 5 months. And during that time, it was decided not to evaluate the building while those adjustments and improvements were being made, because that was not an assessment of the building at
I
its
have an
optimal
extra piece of
operation.
paper, the back of which I can use.
All the remediation department is now.
Oh, yes, that happened right away.
Do you have a pen?
Of course.
Do you have an extra pen?
All right, if you would just step to the side, we will now go into public portion, which is talk about that. Do I have to go through the rules, everybody's aware of the rules of commentary, correct? That you have to limit yourself to 3 minutes, if you're starting to run over time, we're going to give you an indication just to wrap up. The public session is limited to 30 minutes. At the end of the 30 minutes, I will ask the executive clerk to alert us, and we will take a motion to continue the public portion in 15-minute increments for as long as is needed or as the board approves. And comments related to a personnel matter or individual students will not be entertained in public. Public commentary is a time for the board to hear comments from the public. It says not question and answer, but in this particular case, because of the report, we are going to allow you to ask questions of that report. We will monitor to keep you within the 3 minutes, just so that everybody who wants to speak has an opportunity to do so. So, if informational questions regarding training says actually this is not going to apply because we're going to suspend the rules for this particular purposes. District residents who seek additional information will be guided to an administrator who will address the questions or the concerns. All right, so again, if anybody else has a question or a comment, you can always just step to the district clerk to add your name to the list of those who want to speak. I'm going to name those who are scheduled to speak, and then immediately following who's on deck. I say who's on deck, so that you can start to make your way down, and we can move through much quicker to give everybody an opportunity to speak. Okay? So first up is Trish Galena, and followed by Janine Allen. Now let me just stop right there. Janine Allen has asked for an accommodation. Where's Janine? There you are. Janine has a statement to make that she admittedly tells us it's going to be about 7 minutes. It's okay. I got you. You're going to try and summarize it. If not, she has someone who will follow her, who will make the balance of the statement, okay? We will make that accommodation in this particular request. I also want to make just another statement. The board really tries to refrain from Facebook and the social media because we can't get into a dialogue outside of this arena. And there were some comments that were made on Facebook that I just want to clarify. This is a meeting of the Board of Education, and the Board of Education is to interact to hear from the public. There's been criticism that when the public comes up to speak, and I pass the card to the superintendent, he writes notes on the cards and isn't looking at the speaker. He's writing notes so that we can follow up on some of the issues that were raised. The intention of having the public speak is so the Board of Education can hear your comments. We are paying very close attention to what you're saying. I will jot down notes as you are speaking, but just so that we're clear on what our distinct roles are here, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that no one is dismissing anyone who's up here, and that we're simply doing what our respective roles require us to do. So without further ado, Ms. Galina.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Galina. I am a teacher at Frank P. Long. I am the second vice president of the Bellport Teachers Association, and I am a lifelong resident of Bellport. We know the task that you've been charged with is a difficult one, and we appreciate the effort of the board in finally addressing the health crisis of Frank Long. The past few months have also been difficult for our community and our teachers at Frank Long. Tension has been high, and we've been accused of many untruths. There is one truth that I know for certain. Every teacher at Frank P. Long is dedicated to their students, and they work extremely hard to provide them with the quality education they deserve. Their dedication has come into question, and I'd like to shed some light on this. On August 10th, I attended the town Brookhaven Council meeting. During this meeting, Town Supervisor Ed Romaine insinuated, and we can add the presentation here tonight as well, that the teachers of Frank Long have the best attendance record of all the buildings in our district. This comment came during a testimony from Ms. Tony Huffman regarding the illnesses in our district, in our building. Mr. Romaine interrupted Ms. Huffman to make this comment that was not only misleading, but highly insulting to the teachers who put their health second to that of their students in order to ensure that they are educated. One of our teachers recently emailed Mr. Romaine in response to this comment, and in her letter, this is what she says. Quote, I believe the attendance record of our building speaks to the devotion of our staff to the students. We know that consistency of instruction is crucial to the success of our students. We push ourselves to come to work on days we are not well, days we should be going to the doctor. Like parents that forego their own well-being for their children, so do many of the teachers for their students, who we consider to be our children. The attendance record is a testament to the devotion of our teachers. Mr. Romaine is attempting to discredit the illnesses suffered by the teachers in our building in order to justify the VOCs found at Long that we believe stem from the landfill. This behavior doesn't help the situation. It merely perpetuates the divisiveness already felt by many. There is a caveat of reasons why our teachers come to school when they are not feeling well. The shortage of substitutes, the ineffective substitutes, new mothers returning after leave with little to no sick days remaining, or just a few more. The illnesses our teachers are experiencing are real, they are serious, and it is a slap in the face to every dedicated South Country teacher to insinuate otherwise. We hope that you are not going to use the attendance records of our building when it comes to making your decision about whether to close the school. We would also like to know how Mr. Romaine received this information. After tonight's presentation, it's pretty obvious that he had a conversation with someone in central office regarding our attendance, and most likely the issue in its entirety. A board member expressed the need for trust from the BTA. I'm wrapping up. Trust is difficult when our good attendance record becomes ammunition against us. Trust is difficult when test results are not revealed to us in a timely manner or at all. Trust is difficult when teachers are accused of being triggers and instigators. Trust is difficult when it doesn't come with transparency. And once trust is lost, it doesn't return immediately upon request. Thank you.
But I'm going to your rundown.
I'm going to,
Hurry up, the clock's running. Start,
I
start.
hopefully not, because I know they have their own things to say.
Sit over here.
No, he's
Okay, all right. I want to run through quickly.
4 minutes.
Start the clock.
All right.
It started.
So I recently.
Stop the clock. Yes, she did.
Yes, she did.
Okay, I can see. All right, it's okay. So I wrote this letter. Okay, then we started. I think everyone in this room has a copy of the letter, including the board, so I don't feel the need to go, word by word. So I'm just going to point out the things that really concerned me and the consultant that I spoke with, who routinely does these investigations for a company, does government contracts, all of this. And the most important things that we would really like to speak about is, first of all, the test was not done during winter or peak warming months. And these are periods when samples are normally procured. We're calling industry standard. This is when they do this. And it's also when our student population will be shut in from the cold, when the heating system is engaged, when the windows will be closed. It's the time of year when they're most often going to feel the effects. So I really appreciate what we heard tonight, but the school was empty. There were no people moving anything around in the building, and the windows were probably open. I don't see how that really proves anything about what my kid's going to feel in December. The second data is what they use to calculate the wind direction and the likelihood that Frank Malone would be affected by the landfill plume. Again, my consultant works with people who do these things on a regular basis. If Costco is coming to the area, what's it going to do for the environmental impact, that sort of thing. There are much better weather station data points that they could have used for this. One of them is even at Brookhaven National Lab. And those would have been much more effective to show what land masses would affect the movement of the wind. And basically, the information we showed these people, it was kind of laughed at. But even withstanding the 13% of the time, our last report showed that the wind would be moving from the landfill towards the school, that's approximately 48 days out of the year. And with the historical data, you can extrapolate what time of year this is most likely to occur. And our concern is, if that is winter, if that is the prime heating season, you now have the greater chance that that's going to happen at the school time when children are closed in the building. Again, no relevance whatsoever to a July 21st test at all. Thirdly, the ground flow direction, the water ground flow was incomplete. Routinely, this other company incorporates information about public supply wells in the area. We have two, one to the north of the school on Station Road, one to the south of the school on Station Road, well, in Belvoir Village. They affect the water's natural flow when they are turned on. They can pull the water table more into that direction, which pulls this 3,000 feet to the east that he was talking about, very clearly can affect the school. And one sample taken in the dry summer months is not going to give you an idea of what happens at our school during the school year when our children are there. Do you want me to hand it over?
How much more you have to know?
It's just the rest important part. I'd like to do it if you wouldn't mind.
Wrap it up.
Okay. The most important thing is the concept of these 1-hour samples. Again, my consultant's company routinely takes 8-hour samples when they are looking at a business or any building that is going to be occupied for 8 hours of time. Routinely, this is what they do. That is industry standard. Now, I know the consultant said that the DEC had no issue with what they did, but it is my understanding that the DEC is not going to advise you on what to do. They're only going to respond to what they give you. Now, the DEC was given a 1-hour sample, and in that letter that they like to speak about, they really very clearly in that letter said that they were instructed to use the short-term guidelines because they were given a 1-hour sample to look at. In that letter, it says, quote, these short-term guidelines are used to protect the general population from adverse exposure to toxic air contaminants for short-term exposure periods of 1 hour.
Our children are in this building for 8 hours a day, 185 days a year, for 2 years straight. Our teachers for the lifetime of their career. That is not short-term exposure.
Nope.
And again, July has nothing to do with what my poor son may face locked in that school in the winter. Now, I want to say just one more thing.
You had an additional minute.
Okay, well, I just find it amazing that we've been talking about this school for years and years and years. And tonight, the consultant informed us that not only is the school healthy, but it is the second healthiest building in South.
Yeah, give me a break.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
No need to speak. Amy Bender, no need to speak.
No, I didn't.
You do.
Good, Janine. She did a good job. She did. And she was right about every single thing.
Thank you for letting me speak. For those of you who haven't heard before or have not been here, I have a daughter who attended 4th grade at Frank P. Long. She was perfectly healthy when she entered that building. And within 2 months, she suffered respiratory issues, chronic coughing, dizziness, headaches, and scratching. She was scratching her skin until it bled open, but there was nothing there. She has been in perfect health since the second week of the summer, so she will not be returning to Frank P. Long, and that's as per her pediatrician, who believes that it has something to do with the toxins in the school. I feel that it has become the parents' burden of proof, and I feel like I've been on trial all summer to prove that this school is sick and has made my daughter sick, and I think that's very unfair. There are low-level VOCs. We've all heard that tonight, correct? There are low-level VOCs in that building. Do you know that there is absolutely no guideline for low-level VOCs and combinations of them? So we have no idea how they are affecting the children. I have here, one of the parents gave me a fact sheet. This is from the Connecticut Department of Health, which states there are no standards. It also tells you what can happen if you are affected by these. Not everybody is affected by them, thank God, but some people are. My daughter happened to be one of them. I'm hoping that she doesn't have any illness down the road, as that can happen also. We might not know what the effects will be until years from now. Kristen Thorne of ABC News, I had the pleasure of meeting her today. She reported on the 6 o'clock news that the New York State Department of Health told her today that they are conducting a review of disease occurrence at Frank P. Long. Then there's a question, correct? They have a question. They don't know whether there is a connection between the diseases and Frank P. Long. So the New York State Department of Health told ABC News that they are going to be conducting a review of disease occurrence. How many visits to the nurse have these children gone to? Not just now that they're not in school. I am so guilty that I sent my daughter back every day when she didn't feel well, because I thought maybe it was just a new grade, a new school. I didn't know what the issue was. But if the Department of Health has questions, and there are low-level VOCs that nobody has a guideline for, not this man, not the Department of Health, not the DEC, they do not have guidelines. I want all of you to look me in the eye and tell me that you are 110% sure that this school will not make another child or another teacher sick. And if you can look me in the eye and say that, because you can't, because the Department of Health can't,
Wrap it up.
then I ask you how you sleep. This is up to you guys. And you know what? It's not a difficult decision. It's a difficult move. Let's move them to another school. Let's get them to a healthy place. But is it a difficult decision with 690 children and their educators? Hell no.
Got my reporters running around here like crazy.
Okay. Georgia Breyer Keys, is that? And then followed by Beth Didman. Yes, Didman. Georgia Didman.
Everybody wants to interview Amy. Everybody wants to interview Amy.
Good evening. So, this was very painful to sit through, okay? First of all, my name is Dr. Georgia Greer Key. I am a resident, taxpayer. My address is 579 Hampton Avenue, Bellport. I'm steps away from the school. And for one, I am appalled at the options that we're presenting on the website. For one, busing, that's a civil rights issue that we fought. Taking out any activities after school for students, which highly correlate with team building, self-esteem, and achievement. The suggestion to have classroom size increase to 30 to 36 people, and we have educators who know that student achievement and outcomes are highly correlated with classroom size, with the recommendation for kids from K to 3rd grade to be 18. And we're talking about 30 to 36, outrage, not an option. The other thing that's an outrage is to eliminate kindergarten. No way. In what world when we have studies that show that early education, preschool, not just kindergarten, preschool, and the amount of words about vocabulary that students enter into the school with correlates to their success. So whoever wrote up those options, if the school was to be closed, is deplorable. It is not replicatable, and it's not done by scientific merit. So whoever committed those atrocities against our children with those options is disgusting. Now, historically, he talked about 1890. I'm a historian and I'm an educator. And let me tell you, why is this dump here in the first place? Okay? So let's talk about environmental justice. And you may not, you shouldn't clap, because you may not like what I have to say next. If you want to talk about one building, what about the ball fields? What about the brown and black children and the marginalized poor children who live in Health Suffolk, which is a few doors away?
Yes.
So don't attack the board about closing one school building. Maybe we should march on down to the town and ask them why it's there. Where was everybody in 2012 years ago when we, Brookhaven residents in control, fought the power plant that was being proposed 12 years ago? But guess what? This district retook the community host benefits package. So where were you when the power plant was being proposed, when we fought it? Okay, and back then, 12 years ago, the EPA said that this was a non-attainable air zone quality, but they still let the power plant come. So if you want to fight environmental injustice, don't think just about the building. What about all those houses right there? What about the ball fields? What about Health Suffolk? So let me tell you, you talk about your school building, there's a whole disenfranchised community there, and absolutely not. If I saw portable on these school grounds for these children to go into a portable classroom, I personally would take up issue with it and mount to dismantle them myself. When you're thinking about the community, don't just think about the school. Think about those houses that you drive past, and not just the school building. So if you want to talk about environmental injustice, talk about it for the whole entire community and not just the school building. Please stop harassing this board. We're going out to the town.
Thank you very much.
We need to organize. Yes.
You are Beth? Okay. And on deck is Carol
reports had showed one smoking gun. Dr. Gianni and I talked about the fact that it's very difficult when you have a lot of red flags, no specific thing. But you know what? It's time. Safety and security don't just happen. They are the result of collective consensus and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens of our society, a life free of violence, fear, and safety. That's from Nelson Mandela, as he says it better than I do. But I'm going to tell you about another town that had a problem. And the citizens were getting sick. And it was a little here, and a little there, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. The scientific studies did not conclusively prove that the chemicals were responsible for the residents' illnesses. And the scientists were divided on the issue, even though 11 known carcinogens have been identified, including our, is it there, is it not there, benzene. Okay? And here's the thing. They needed geologists to study the groundwater. They needed people going into the community to report what was actually happening. But you know what? In the end, it was a sick town. And you know what the mayor said to that sick town? He said, there's nothing wrong with Love Canal. Okay? That's a serious thing. That's a serious burden on you guys. Don't be that guy. Don't be that woman. Be the person who said we have enough evidence of anecdotal nature. Okay? The science doesn't support it. Maybe the science isn't there yet. But meanwhile, you have a community that counts on you. The National Council of Research, talking about the Love Canal problem, noted that children who were exposed were found to have excess seizures, learning problems, hyperactivity, skin irritation, skin rashes, abdominal pain, incontinence, stunted growth. The problem, according to a famous Newsday writer, was that there's too many things coming from too many different places. But I gotta tell you, if you remember the MASH series from long ago, back in the day, as I do, one of the famous episodes was called 5 O'Clock Charlie. And every day Obama came, they had an ammunition dump right next to the hospital. This makes no sense. This makes no sense at all. Every day this guy would come home at 5 o'clock and we would try to bomb them. And he was the world's lousiest bomber, thank God. But in the end, we have a bomb sitting next to our kids. My kids especially vulnerable. But we're all at risk. And you guys can't fix the town problem. You can't fix Mr. Romaine and his parents' attitudes. What you can fix, yes, what you can fix is what's before you today. You have flags. You don't need the books running to see that we have a problem. Get the kids out of harm's way. Then we will all, as a community of responsible adults, be able to look our kids in the face and say, I did this for you because you're more important than maybes. Give your kids safety. That's your job. Tell them how you handle the situation is going to tell them how you feel about them.
Thank you. Followed by Monique Armand.
You're gonna hold this while I'm up there?
I have a couple of things I was going to write down.
Not yet. I'm not great right there. You gotta do is just hold it over there. Okay.
Could you just bring the mic closer to you?
I have a lot of questions that weren't answered, even in the emails that I sent. You know, first, we all know that this is not just, at least I know, that it's not just Frank B. Long. It is a community thing, but the only person that had tested was Frank B. Long. So we have to go with what we have. So it is, we don't want anybody to be in harm's way. We want something done about this. We want everyone to use their common sense. So I was thinking about the numbers. These numbers seem to be changing. So I wanted to bring up a couple of different things. I have been through, my son, I'll give you a number, 14 days. That's how long my son stayed in the hospital. 9 days at Stony Brook University and 5 days at Boston Children's Hospital. They could not find the cause of all of his symptoms. But what they did do is make sure that they called every environmental doctor that they knew. They thought it was very plausible that all of his symptoms were consistent with chemical exposure. Now, those are the Harvard doctors that are now actually, they came back in after one, came back, did more testing for my son, and have me going back ironically on September 11th for the rest of the team of doctors to look at him. What they said is that there is no guidelines on the combinations of 24 VOCs. So that, all those other doctors don't really agree with you. But what they did say is that it's a hot topic and they need more information. I did have a researcher who wrote to me, and he said that my son's exposure and also other data was very consistent with chemical exposure. So that's the first thing. Now the other thing is that with your guidelines that seem to keep on changing, we had 3, that's another number, right? 3 different tests, 3 different guidelines. I don't know how I can take any of the work seriously.
Yeah.
Now, we said that the DEC and the DOH had commented on the reports. I've talked to them. They do not have any control over what his guidelines are. So it had to be the board that decided to lower our guidelines. Is that the case? So then what was the first question answer?
Mm-hmm.
Who asked to lower, who told them to lower the levels?
So your question on the report is the difference in the
No, I'm asking who told him to change the levels?
Yeah.
He has a protocol as a company. His protocol, right? Was your protocol to use those levels that you used on the first 2 tests? Is that your protocol? The test that you used, now we all don't understand the tests?
Does the board want me to address?
Yes, it's question and answer.
Ms. Wilkinson, we'll get your questions answered.
Okay, can I have a couple more minutes because it's empty while?
Okay, at the May 3rd meeting with the DEC,
Please stand.
DEC said comparison to the AGC was inappropriate based on the sampling performed. The comparison should be made with the SJC, and that's reflected in our May 30th report, the most recent sampling.
But what about the other report? The report before that, what levels were used?
The indoor air guidelines for the home heating.
So they changed, right? Did they
No,
change?
they were used differently.
They were used differently.
No, they
You're
changed.
comparing apples to oranges.
No,
No, I
no,
don't think
no.
Oh, that's okay. I'm not saying something personally against you. I'm just telling you you're mistaken in that the initial study that was done in 2015 was to evaluate the potential for VOCs within the building and make a comparison to the outside air using the 2006 DEC fuel oil study, which will come familiar with 95th percentile,
Mm-hmm.
that the outside samples were used to determine what influence outside air might have had on the indoor results. So that's the first comparison you saw that you're saying is comparison A, let's call it. Comparison B, and that was because at the time, all we were doing was assessing VOCs in the building. So if you want to assess what's in the building, you have to assess what might influence the outside results. From the outside. Get that? Okay, so sure. We have unit ventilators that bring in between 10 and 20% fresh air. So what's outside influences the values inside. So you subtract the out. Well, I won't interrupt you if you interrupt me. I'll just finish the point that the inside value has to have a subtraction of the outside value. That's why you look at it and compare it to the outside.
So why they change it for the next 2?
The second one was used to determine what the quality of the air was outside the building. That was a concern of the staff, was that we believe that the landfill is influencing the health of the building. So, we took samples inside, we took samples outside and compared them to 2 different standards. One, inside home heating oil, just like the last time. 2 now, a comparison to the AGC.
Which is wrong.
Very low number. 1 hour sample outside. At the meeting with the DEC on May 3rd, when we showed them the second round of similar tests, they said you should not be comparing outside samples to AGC unless you're sampling on the landfill, which is where the chronic, daily, regular exposure takes place. You're evaluating a building that is not exposed 24/7, 365. It's exposed occasionally. You should be using the short-term guideline concentration. So
They
we
didn't
made
say
a
he
comparison
should
to the
be.
May
They
2017
didn't
report to the
say what
SGC.
he should be
That's
doing.
comparison C. So we had A, B, and C. B, because we used the more conservative, but to the DEC's dissatisfaction, comparison to a location that is not the landfill. Or building.
Okay,
away
but
from
who
the
hired you?
Ms. Wilkinson,
Well,
this is,
That's
Ms.
what
Wilkinson.
I saw your email that you sent me.
Yes.
I
Who
read
else?
it top to bottom.
Yeah.
And we work with regulators all the time. We don't, this is not, I've heard people interchangeably use the word guideline and standard inappropriately. All of these DEC regulations contain guidelines to give the DEC flexibility in making judgment calls, for instance, like the PCB in the groundwater. It's not a hard and fast rule. In fact, the hard and fast rules that I identified were in the state of California. If you're above, then all these triggers take place. But in New York State, DEC is bound by guidelines. They have the discretion to make a decision about a result and determine whether further action is required or none is required. That's a guideline. The standard is a speed limit. If you're doing 56, you have broken the regulation and it needs to be corrected. Those are two different things.
New York State told me that they have only those below recommendations because they don't have and they cannot control anything that a private company does. And that these guidelines are one of many. And then you have
Ms.
some of them
Wilkinson.
that didn't have anything next to it.
That's a ridiculous statement in the sense that I prepare a report. I prepare reports.
Ms. Wilkinson, this is a purpose of question and answer, to have your question answered, not to get into debate. Questions? We're going to, but we have other, first of all, we've expired the 30 minutes. So we have to give every. No, I'm not gonna, we are not going to deny you a chance. You will have an opportunity to have your questions answered. You don't have to leave. We just have to take a motion. All I'm asking you is just to ask the question, let our consultant answer the question. Well, it's a lengthy report, and we did the most comprehensive testing that has been done. So we're going to get through this, and we're going to do it by following the guidelines that we have set for here for this particular meeting. There is we've expired the 30 minutes for the public portion. If we want to continue for another 15 minutes, it requires a motion and a second. If there is a motion, we'll entertain it. Motion by Mrs. Santos, and a second by Mr. Nix. All those in favor of extending for another 15 minutes, please signify by raising your hands. Are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries unanimously. We'll go for another 15 minutes, and you'll let us know when that time expires. So finish up. I'm going to ask you if you could ask 2 more questions so we can get to the rest of the cards.
Isn't it an EPA guideline, EPA, right? That they recommend that you do 8-hour testing on schools, and also isn't it another in a guideline that you have schools be tested when it is in prime heating months, just like you had recommended on 2 of your reports?
Sure. So let me take the first question. EPA doesn't make the recommendation. It's New York State DEC that makes recommendations about sampling.
Oh my God.
Indoors in the case where there is the presence of a plume or contaminated soil to evaluate soil vapor intrusion.
He's just going to twist my
hundreds of work plans at the DEC and never taken a sample that exceeded 1 hour ever, unless it was a home, in which case a 24-hour sample. I've reviewed just as many reports of other consultants who have collected the sample for 1 hour and had the DEC reach conclusions and make remarks about a work plan prior to the initiation of remediation. So this question about 1 hour, 8 hour, 24 hour, first of all, contextually only applies when you've got the presence of a plume or contaminated soil, neither of which exist, frankly, long. The DEC could then come back and say, we would like to have additional data taken, a longer sample, for instance. It's never happened in 20 years. EPA has no influence over its process. It's an it's a DEC discretionary decision. And like I said, I mean, I've submitted literally hundreds of soil vapor intrusion studies where there was contamination either from a plume or from contaminated soil, and never received the comment that the sample was inadequate. And that was furthered, I would just say, in the 2 letters that we received last week.
Right, and I know this is the last statement I can make then, but isn't it true that the board and the South Country School District hired you?
Of course.
So why are you going by the DEC and what the DEC tells you to do? Why did it go against your company policies of what you thought was right? Or did you not know the guidelines?
I read that, and at first I can't really understand what you're saying about the policy, first of all, because I just explained comparison A, B, and C, and what the investigation was in each of those circumstances. When we used the AGs, let's put first comparison aside in 2015, right? We agree that our initial investigation was the potential for soil vapor intrusion, of which we did not know whether it existed or not, and followed the home heating study guidelines, where you take an indoor sample and you compare it to an outside sample. You subtract out the outside air component, and you're left with a net. That was comparison A. Comparison B was to the AGC standard. It was the DEC who said AGCs are only used in a permitting process of a facility or a landfill at that location to assess whether on a 24/7, 365 basis they are off-gassing contaminants to adjacent properties. That you should be using the SGC, a short term. Let's be real about the exposure to Frank P. Long. The wind doesn't prevail 365 from the north in the direction of the landfill 24 hours a day. Whether you think it's 13, and I stand by the evaluation that 80% or more of the time the wind blows in a direction other than the landfill. That it doesn't represent an acute 24-hour 365 exposure. Hence the use of the SGC, the short-term guideline, which is rational when you evaluate it that way.
I'm glad that the DEC was able to teach you how to do it.
It's not a teaching, it's not a teaching moment, but that's just for you to decide. I could also...
You're keeping your finger on the something. That's it. Yeah, keep on that.
Hi, I'm Monique Garman. I don't have a prepared statement. I just have some questions. I just wanted to ask first if Environ Science always meets with the DEC before they give results to their clients. As you stated in the last Board of Ed meeting, on May 31st, you had a meeting with the DEC, and that's when they said that they had advised that they would use an SGC rating instead of what you were currently using. I understand that you asked for that meeting on May 23rd, and that you met on the 31st with 5 different people with the DEC. And I was just curious because you said that that's when you changed your guidelines from what they suggested, but the date of the cover letter on that May testing to Mr. Burgess is dated May 30th, but I noticed that the guidelines in the actual report already showed semi-annual, even though the DEC had to come back and say that that was an incorrect, it should have said SGC, not semi-annual. So I was just curious on how that was changed after a meeting occurred and why you felt it necessary on the 23rd of May to call a meeting with the DEC, and if that's normal practice that you have with all of our tests. The other thing I wanted to say too.
Can I answer my
I don't
question?
need him 3 minutes. Okay, no.
Hit the pause button.
Let him answer the question. We'll go back.
First of all, we meet with the DEC on a regular basis for interaction on behalf of all of our clients, not just South Country schools. With respect to South Country, we found ourselves, quite honestly, playing a game of catch-up as representatives of the school district and a school district in the information flow. We came to learn, and this was primarily myself and Sam attending these meetings with the DEC, that many meetings were being held with other groups in the area, keeping them informed about things like neighborhood monitoring. At our first meeting with the DEC, We didn't know that Martha Avenue was being assessed, or that the fire department was being assessed, or that Frank B. Long had been assessed, and that consumer canisters had been distributed to staff. We were presented at our first meeting back in 2016 with this exhaustive spreadsheet that showed monthly sampling results that went through April of that year. The meeting that you're referring to in May was designed as a follow-up to see where things had evolved to a year later with regards to studies being performed by the DEC in and around the area to keep the district informed, number one, about what's going on, because they were getting presentations from screenshots on phones. They were getting forwarded copies of emails from CCE about presentations that they had intended that the school had never been invited to. There was this sense that the school was being excluded, and so at that May meeting, we made it clear to the DEC that we wanted to more proactively be involved in any community meetings or presentations or data sharing that they felt they were going to undertake. At that meeting, they also asked us for our results that we'd obtained since 2015. They reviewed them and made the recommendation that we should be not making a comparison to AGC, because that is a criteria they use in permitting places like the Brookhaven Landfill, where, when they gave us that long exhaustive spreadsheet, if there was an exceedance to AGC, they could issue a corrective action for the landfill, for example. And they did. They issued a corrective action that resulted in the expedition of the capping program and the installation of 20 gas extraction wells on the landfill because they were exceeding AGC. But they said when we do comparisons at Martha Avenue and the fire department and at the school, we use SGC. Those guidelines are intended to evaluate exposures from time to time, not constantly like the landfill. So that's why that meeting took place, and because there's a constant flow and exchange of data between us and that agency. Why wouldn't we? We don't operate in a vacuum under any circumstance, and in the case of both the DEC and the DOH, they provide cutting-edge guidance. And they're the ones that ultimately make the decision. Somebody made the point that the DEC and the DOH only react. That's not true at all. They correct and comment and modify work plans on a daily basis for all contaminated sites all around New York State. They are the watchdog, the shepherd, and the jury in enforcement of their regulations.
So I have just another question about the three tests. You did the same testing in the same locations on I'm not talking about July tests, the same test, but the December, the June, and the May, those are one for each year. You did the same testing in the same locations across the school. There were 1-hour canister testing in the same exact locations across the school for those 3 different testings. But then you just made the comment that when asked about when you use the NYSDOH standard in your very first test, and you're trying to explain why that was done, but in the last Board of Ed meeting, you showed, and your slide showed, that when you went back to that those December readings, and used the SGC scale,
The AGC.
The SGC.
The second test time you used the AGC.
In your PowerPoint presentation from the last meeting, you showed the December 15 results that had high levels of particular toxin, that when you applied the SGC level, that it made it within parameters.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Okay, so my question is, how are you going to go back now and change all those past reports to go to this SGC level now?
Sure, so that's a good question. Number one, I told you that the initial investigation in 2015, we were simply addressing concerns presented by the staff regarding indoor air quality. And to do that assessment, you compare outdoor to indoor using DOH guidelines. The second time, the concern was the influence of the landfill and or other environmental factors on the building, hence the comparison to AGC that shouldn't have taken place. When I was giving the presentation last month, I simply said to the board that if you were to compare those second round of tests to the SGC, there wouldn't be an exceedance. I did not rewrite any of the reports so that we could, in the spirit of
transparency show that continuity.
No, but that's what I'm asking.
Very
Are those past reports all going to be changed now to the current?
Absolutely not.
They're not. So they're going to stand as they are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then that situation was confusing to me then is that we have 3 different tests. They all show different levels of toxins at different times, even though they're all in the same exact location testing. So it's difficult to understand how we're supposed to really want to test over and over.
Don't go anywhere. Was that for 15 minutes or for? Okay. So we'll have this on my question.
So thank you for answering those questions. I just have another question too. We had a pesticide in the last, the dichlorpropane that hasn't been mentioned, that magically disappeared. Did we clean it up? What happened with that? Is it still there?
The status of the finding of pesticide in 2017 is that the district has obtained pricing, and we're in the process of delineating the extent of the remediation. It will result in the collection of some amount of soil from the basement using certified methods, and then retesting to ensure that remediation is effective.
And is that going to happen while the kids are back in school?
It will not happen while the school is occupied.
But it'll be during the school year?
It's likely.
And so my last, thank you for that. The only other thing I want to make a comment to is the board of ed, and I know that this issue of the testing has run across different boards of ed, not just yours. So I really hope, I just don't understand why we got to this point where this all started because somebody wanted a copy of the report of testing. Reports that we didn't know were even happening for the last 3 years. And you have said it many times, Ms. Elise and Dr. Gianni, that you care about the students in our school. If you were spending money, and we found it's a lot of money for these reports, why wouldn't you share them with the parents and the public? I mean, why, if you said in the last meeting, is that you had to learn about the results during open meeting, because that was open meeting law. This is not the first test. We've never had an open meeting about any of the previous test results from the previous tests. And I don't know why that is.
I'm glad you asked the question because it was going to be part of my closing statement before we conclude tonight. But
You're in your
some of the
closing
issues
statements
that you raised
already?
are right. I read a quote today that says your best teacher is your last mistake. And it was a mistake that residents had to foil the reports. But I want you to know that it was this board on July 5th that said our residents, our parents should never have to foil a health and safety report ever again, and everything should be made available on the website, and it was, I think, forward. And as long as we're here, we're the ones who made that commitment to you. So I can't speak as to why. I will speak to the June 14th meeting, the last Board of Education meeting that we had for the school year of 16-17. We were provided with that test, the test results that came from May, the May test results. At that meeting, it was in our agenda. We just went to, online board docs to go read.
Great guys, doing a great job.
Hello.
So we were provided with that report. We weren't, I wasn't, I'll take full responsibility, that I wasn't aware I was provided with that report. We had many reports that night. In fact, we were given, I think, 7 or 8 different past indoor air quality reports. We didn't go through them because of the lengthy agenda of that night anyway. It was the retirement night, it was tenure night, it was trying to change the batteries. And so it got missed. It got missed. And when I was called by a constituent that the report was foiled before it was given out to perhaps another organization, to the board, I really thought I didn't get it. And none of us picked it up at that meeting. So I'm going to take full responsibility because I missed it too. So we are conscious of that. We were aware of it after the fact. And from that point forward, everything about Frank P. Long, and I would presume to say everything about any other kind of testing that is going to go on, if need be, will be made available immediately as, after the board hears it, it'll be made available immediately to the residents.
I hope so.
On July 5th.
I hope so, because we did actually make a in-person request to the superintendent for that, and we were told to FOIL. Yeah. And that was back in May.
Yep.
We received the FOIL.
You're correct. No, you're absolutely correct. That was the
That's
policy.
his decision.
That was the policy back
It's
then.
his
that it had to be
decision.
FOIL. What
No.
I'm
So you're
telling
changing
you,
your policy now?
There's no policy.
what I'm telling you
No.
is this board on July 5th sent a directive to the superintendent that no indoor air quality reports should have to be FOIL, and it should be made available on the website, and it was, and it is to this,
Thank you.
all right?
Appreciate it.
So, and keep the dialogue open, because that's the only way we improve. All right, I thank you for your comments.
Good.
Oh, I forgot to say who's on deck.
You got a message, which you did well.
I'm from Moresco.
Hi, Santo and
The thing about the hydrogen sulfide and how the testing results from the landfill were 21,000 parts per million, so on and so forth. I posted that on
Nancy Dodge, you're up.
You didn't address that at all, did you?
Palermo,
Okay.
followed by Wendy Majal.
No, I was trying to address the pesticide, and I wanted to get to the methyl chloride, but I didn't get a chance to do that.
Hi, I want to thank the board for authorizing additional testing and what's going on, and I appreciate that you are taking the interest of the community. I also want to thank our amazing community of teachers, parents, and concerned citizens who have spent countless hours asking the difficult questions, researching, and searching for answers as to why so many staff, members, and children at Frank Long have been sick or passed away. They've been acting with passion and not hysteria. At times, it feels like we're divided between the believers and non-believers, or simply those who have been affected and those who have not experienced illness, or perhaps it's just haven't experienced any illnesses yet. To those unaffected, I say be grateful and consider yourself lucky. I consider myself one of the lucky ones because while my daughter has experienced or had experienced regular migraines while at Frank Long, she's healthy now since attending Bellport Middle School. I didn't make the connection of her migraines being connected to attending Frank Long. She did. I sent her to school every day, feeling sick. In fact, she had perfect attendance and she'll be a great teacher one day, like all the other teachers who go over there. I didn't know, and quite honestly, I feel horrible because I told her, no excuses, get out there, go to school, it's important. But I know now, we all know now. I'm by far not any expert on VOCs or nations or what levels are safe. I don't know how to make sure how mosquito chocolate, I don't know how to secondhand solution. I don't really know that any of us are true experts on the combinations and what's happening right now at Frank Long. But we know people are getting sick. Something isn't right. Just as our children are expected to use their common sense, we adults need to practice what we preach. If Frank Long is in a healthy environment, we cannot expect it to be acceptable to expose our children and teachers to that unhealthy environment. We do need to work together. It's a horrible, terrible situation that we're dealt with, but while we're trying to figure it all out, I don't think it's worth it to gamble on anybody's health. I think it's great if we can work together. What you just said was great about the transparency. If we get a panel together where everybody can work together, that will probably ensure trust. But in the meantime, until we find out what that something is that's creating the illness in the schools, I don't think we can put anybody else at risk. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Tara, you're up.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Terry Palermo, lung cancer survivor. I've worked with Frank Long for 36 years. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. How did we get here to this point? What was the triggers? The health issues that faced the staff at Frank Long are not new. Over the years, questions regarding the work environment have been triggered by an increase of autoimmune diseases, sinus issues, mystery rashes, respiratory issues, headaches, dizziness, stomach issues, thyroid problems, and cancer among the staff at Frank Law. As a result, 4 teachers were triggered to embark on a journey searching for answers to the health issues when yet another teacher died from cancer. The journey has been an eye-opener for the 4 of us. It triggered support and help from unexpected places and people. Yet the people we overly sought back in 2000 for the support in 2015 were not triggered to speak out or write letters to support us in our search for answers. This fact is very disheartening, especially since we were told we were going to be treated like family. In a letter to the South Country school community, Dr. Gianni wrote recently, he said, recently some residents expressed concern regarding the school and the Brookhaven Landfill. It appears these concerns have been triggered by concerns expressed by teachers in some of the testing results. The May 2017 testing results were emailed to a parent through the Freedom of Information Act. Those test results were never forwarded to the BTA or the team of teachers who have been working on the health issues at Law since 2015.
I gave them to her.
It wasn't until the parents started questioning us over the results and their concerns that we realized we were missing important information. The parents' concern was triggered by the FOIL, not by the teachers' concerns. What triggered the parents to foil the test results? The death of yet another friend and colleague in May of this year triggered Trish Galena and I to speak once again at a board meeting regarding the health issues at Frank Law. We asked again for the Board of Ed and Dr. Gianni to reach out to the health department regarding our numerous illnesses in the building. After all, we were supposed to be treated like family. The fact that we spoke at that meeting triggered the parent to foil for the test results. The May 2017 results did trigger us to take a closer look at the relationship of the VOCs found inside and outside the building and the staff's illnesses. The end result was there was a correlation between the illnesses, symptoms, locations, and VOCs. Scientists, doctors, and researchers who we shared our findings with believe that the staff's illnesses were triggered by low exposure over a long period of time to the VOCs. I have a little bit more, okay? Tonight, the team still has unanswered questions. What triggered 5 people to get cancer at different times in one room? Or 3 people in another room to die of cancer? What triggered the cancer in 17 people in one way? I'm sure 5 superintendents have not had cancer from that office. The bottom line is all the letters, tests, and political friendships will not bring back the 11 staff members who have died of cancer, nor will it give me back my lung, or ease the pain and suffering of those who have autoimmune diseases and other illnesses. Finally, what is it going to take to trigger all of you to show support to the staff who are working at Frank Law? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. First of all, I'm asking again, as I have in the past 4 meetings, what we were supposed to do when we or when other people have a signed letter. I will have a signed letter from my neurologist and from her pediatrician that she cannot enter that school due to the VOC's environmental contaminants in the air. She is an increased risk to develop an autoimmune disease. And my neurologist is going to say that she cannot go to this school. Okay, so I am not sending her to this school. So you guys have to hear me and listen to me now. She cannot go. Would you put your daughter or your daughter in that school knowing that she has an increased risk for an autoimmune disease? I don't think so, and I'm not going to do it. So something needs to be done. You need to start listening to the parents. You need to start listening to the teachers. Something needs to be done. People are getting sick. This is, think about it. You have to look at everything. Please don't just sit there and pass it off as a hysterical housewife. That's right. It's real and it's a concern. So I am telling you, so knowing that, I cannot put her in that school. So I need to know, and you can write that down on your yellow card, that you need to contact me because my daughter is not going to that school, and I need other alternatives because I am a taxpayer in this community. Also, another part of it that I want to talk about, really elevated levels due to blue markers and air fresheners. Oh, take a look out of the window. The huge dump outside. Really? It doesn't take, it's common sense. It's the dump. Come on, people. Wake up. Shut the school down. I'm sorry. Do something about it. You guys have, you can do something about it. Make a difference.
Right. Followed by John O'Neill.
My name is Connie Hayden, and I work at Frank P. Long. I want you to understand what it's like to work at Frank P. Long. An email or an announcement that starts, attention staff, emergency faculty meeting 2:45 in the library. We gather together to hear of the news. Another staff member diagnosed with cancer or a staff member has passed away from cancer. This is the reality of working at Frank P. Long. We work in a building where many of our friends are diagnosed and die of cancer. We work in a building where many of our friends are sick and diagnosed with autoimmune diseases, have severe headaches, sinus and upper respiratory issues, rashes, along with cancer. We all have simple wishes, seeing our children graduate, get married, or hold our grandchild for the first time. Some of my friends who work there are not going to be able to do that. I ask that anyone who works at Frank P. Long or has worked there in the past to please stand now. Look at us. We crossed the threshold. Look at us. We cross the threshold every day to work in a profession that we love. We support friends and colleagues when they're sick and dying. Every 2 years, a staff member is diagnosed with cancer. 2 years. Look at our faces. Who's going to be next? Whose family will you have to face next, telling them how sorry you are that they lost their husband or wife, mother or father, sister or brother, or grandmother or grandfather? And no one has been paying attention to our other children, our students who have been sick. They haven't monitored their sicknesses because they leave after 2 years, and some of them recover. We, the staff at Frank P. Long, love to do what we do, but we're not lucky enough to leave after 2 years. When the 4 of us, Trish, Terry, Joe, and I, started this quest to fight for our building, we had one outcome. All we want is to work in a safe environment. So now it's up to you as the board to imagine this. Would you rather go to sleep every night knowing you made a decision to save lives, or continue to have us attend another emergency faculty meeting at 2:45 in the library?
Oh.
The decision is yours to make. Thank you.
Wow. Powerful.
Followed by Linda Meisner.
Did you put a card in?
Linda. I'm sorry.
Hello again. Thank you for giving me a third or fourth opportunity to speak to you this summer about a crisis that you guys are facing. Smoke and mirrors, that's what you just heard. Partial truths, lies. I came here tonight to give you a history, to read articles from old newspapers, to take you through the cancer rates that have been plaguing our community and studies. And lo and behold, up in front of me, a gentleman puts up something that I recognize. A study that I had in my hands that said something to this effect, and I'll read right from it. Results of the cancer incidence study found that overall the number of cancers diagnosed during the years 1983 to 1992 among males, females, children, and young adults were not statistically significantly different from the numbers expected. You saw that. I saw it. Everybody here saw it. Here's another sentence from the same article. From the same article. I have it here. Among specific cancer sites, bladder cancer and malignant melanoma of the skin among males and uterine cancer among females exhibited significant excesses in number of cases observed compared with the numbers expected. Why didn't you see that up here?
Yes.
Because it's smoke and mirrors. The devil is in the details.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Over here. Could you read 2 sentences further where it says...
You know this article. Why didn't you put that up on the board if you know it? I will not read it further. I will read what I want to read.
Yeah, you put up what you want to put up.
Here's something else. There was a person that I met, another teacher, who spoke earlier. I'm angry. I'm sorry. I'm breathing hard. But I am very, very upset about this. Who has lost a lung, gave a lung to this community. That is something significant. Where did it go? Here's another sentence a little bit further down. When the combined time period, 1983 to 1996, was examined, a statistically significant excess in total cancers was found among females. The excess in total number of female cancer cases is accounted for by a statistically significant excess in uterine cancer, as well as non-significant excesses in cancers of the lung and breast. Smoke and mirrors. He's handed it to you people. The devil is in the details. Study the letter that was read earlier tonight. She didn't have time to read the whole thing. She summarized it. But study it. It'll help you understand what we're going through here. We have a gentleman who says that there is no exit of fumes from the basement because they closed doors. I gave you a study last month that says that basements exude the VOCs. We were concerned with the 1,2, what was the name of it? The dichloropropylene, chloropropylene. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person who's been around and knows when he's being hoodwinked. You don't hear about it anymore. All of a sudden, they're going to clean it up. They don't know where it came from, but they're going to clean it up. They have no prior studies when they've gone down there. Where did they think it came from? It came from the dump. May I have another moment?
Sure, just real quick.
It's time, people. It's time. It's time you acted on your gut and you listened to your parents and your students and your friends. I'm your friend. I graduated from Belcourt High School in 1958. The friends I made there, I still have. I love this district. I love this community. I stayed here. I raised my 5 children in it. My 12 children, grandchildren go to this school. I don't want to have to see my daughter move out of the district to get her son a decent education free of harm. It's been going on a long time, 1995, Suffolk Life. What was once a deal between two towns with cash for trash with Hempstead has turned into negotiations with the towns of Smithtown, Huntington, Islip, and Southampton for their incinerator waste. Construction and demolition debris samples have included hazardous substances such as PCBs, methylene chloride, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, and trichlorofluoroethylene. My goodness gracious, how much more information do you need? We're not your scientists. There they are, and they're working for somebody else.
Would the consultant like to respond to some of the comments?
Only if I can respond to him.
He'll respond.
I greatly respect your enthusiasm. In the paragraph that you read, you stopped 2 sentences short. It says the later time period, 1993-96, and the combined time period, 83-96, the uterine cancers were generally diagnosed among women 45 years of age and older, as would be expected. Most importantly, uterine cancer has no known environmental risk factors.
About lung cancer. Well, how about lung cancer? That's mentioned too.
The only cancer that influenced the result to be significantly in excess was uterine cancer. Uterine cancer having no known environmental causes. So it's disingenuous to read the first 2 sentences and not read the last 2.
It's disingenuous to put up a positive statement that supports your contention that there's nothing wrong with Frankie Law. Also, that you excerpted from this article, sir.
I just finished the concept that you were trying to illustrate to the board, that you were giving the impression that uterine cancer was the result of exposure to Frankie Law.
I'm giving you the impression, and the board the impression, that it's smoke and mirrors, that you don't have the guts to put up there the truth. You only put up those statements that you make that help your cause, that there's nothing wrong with Frankie Long. There's something wrong. People are dying, sir. Did you take that into account? This study, madam, this study was done over a period of time comprising...
Mr. O'Neill, it's approaching 10 o'clock. And we
yeah,
have
I know it's getting late.
11 and 12 more cards.
Let me not hold you up too much longer.
How about you have a seat? We'll continue the cards. And when you find your place, if you want to come up again at the end, we'll leave.
Okay, fine.
Okay?
As I have a map.
Okay.
I
love math.
Just for the benefit of the board, this...
He's going to have the last word, see?
Referenced in the report.
Parents?
No, not at all. And I'll also just say it says additional review of male bladder and female uterine cancer showed no obvious clustering in the uterine.
Okay.
What's that?
Want to make a comment?
One big cluster. It's only a small district. It's from Yaphank Avenue to the bay, from Commons River to Patchogue Yaphank Road. It's a small area. People are dying in it.
Mr. O'Neill.
Okay, so I'm just going to apologize in advance because not all of my thought process was in order. But I just wanted to start with, if there's nothing wrong with the school, why would there even be options on the website on closing the school? They wouldn't be there if there wasn't a problem or a question of a problem. If we know the tests are more accurate in the winter, why are we doing them in the summer? Most of these are direct, just giving you something to think about. This isn't 1982 to 1995. I was 10 in 1995. I don't want statistics from 22 years ago.
Thank you. Yep. Yes.
That's what I want. If there's been issues for 30 years and we knew it, why have we not been setting money aside for years so that we could take care of this? There's no reason for it to get this far. We're not notifying the community of supposed dangers of the children in the school. A lot of my friends' daughters got a letter in the mail about the testing. I got nothing. Why? Why was there no letter sent to every house in the district, with children or without? Question for everybody on the board, and especially him. Would you work in Frank P. Long every day for 30 years? Would you let in the worst supposed room, or most questionable room of the building? Would you have your wife work in that room? Would you send 4 children through that school with no reservations?
Well, you can only send 3. I would.
Well, I'm about to send 3 more. So with no reservations, because if you have a single reservation, the school should not be open. I can't sleep at night knowing that my next child to go through this school already suffers from migraines. She has been since she was 4. She's more susceptible to everything. How am I supposed to sleep at night knowing that she's the next one of my children to go through Frank P? If we are so concerned about taxpayer dollars, did anybody consider asking the community for help? We need to ask the community for help for whatever option we choose. Community service is good for our kids. There are plenty of kids, high school age, middle school age. My daughter that just finished Frank P, she would be willing to help. Simple things like moving desks or books or whatever you want. Kids can do that. Parents can do that. I know a lot of, I lost my place, hold on. We need to teach the kids that it's not just some crappy school in some town as far as they're concerned. You know, I love this town, we love this town. We're a community and we all need to work together to make it a great one. We have licensed electricians, plumbers, construction workers, architects, contractors. Why can't we ask them for help? They've got licenses. Maybe they will donate some time. We just have to ask. The worst they can do is say no. Adults without trade working skills and students can help with things too, moving things and whatever. Residents with no children in the district would help because the more we volunteer in our community, the less money we spend and the less taxes we're going to end up paying. We have lots of ways to ask for volunteers. The news, they're here tonight. Get it out in the news. I've had so many people come up to me in this last month saying, I saw you on the news. Yes, you did. So help us. You know, it's not difficult. Belport, Brookhaven, Medford, Gap-Hank, East Patchogue, they're all children from these towns in our district. If you live here, help. Social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I know you said you don't want it, but these are the fastest way to get news to people and asking for help. The main school webpage, walking door to door. I'm willing to walk door to door to ask people for help because this is my community and it's important to me. Don't tell me it can't be done. It can be done. Ask and people will come.
So moved, followed by Adrienne Esposito. Just as a reminder to the public portion. We ask you questions of the report, that's fine. I would just ask that you refrain from personal attacks. We're not here to attack anybody. You want questions on the report, we want you to have them, and we'll get them for you. But let's refrain from personal attacks. Oh, okay, sorry. Adrienne Esposito, you're up. Followed by Ms. Huffley.
Oh, this is going to be good. It's Adrienne. Where is Adrienne Esposito? That's her. Yeah. Where does she work? She's like the head of like a huge environmental community. She got every environmental West Islip thing.
Good evening, members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Adrienne Esposito. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment. Since my organization's name has been invoked and maligned several times this evening, I'd like the opportunity to simply respond. There seems to be a great deal of questions swirling around the meeting that myself, but also several of the teachers and community leaders had with the DEC back in February 2016. Apparently you received a letter from the DEC dated August 10th of this year. That letter states that the department staff review of the volatile organic chemical data did not uncover any consistent patterns that would indicate there is any one specific dominant outdoor source of the VOCs other than characteristic pattern of VOCs related to vehicular traffic. That statement is blatantly false. It is not correct. The letter you have also says, quote, the widespread claim, made by us, that the department determined the landfill to be the predominant source of benzene found in the neighborhood is incorrect. I want you to know that statement is also false. I stand by my testimony last month, and I stand by it tonight. Why am I so strong about that? Well, fortuitously, recently I was provided an audio recording of the hour and 20-minute meeting that we had with the DEC in February 2016. I reviewed that meeting again, twice today, with myself and my co-workers. We reviewed it in detail. In fact, I would like to read you some quotes from that audio recording of said meeting.
Are you going to provide a copy of that report for us to verify?
I have a letter, and I have the, I can do that if you'd like.
We would very much like that. I just also wanted to clarify.
Okay.
You had, don't worry.
I'm going to get
I'll give you the time.
You have his paranoid.
You'll give the time. You would disagree with the findings of the report.
Not the report, the letter.
The DEC.
Oh.
Correct. You disagree with it?
With DEC's letter dated August 10th.
I'm uncomfortable with you saying it's false. DEC is a regulatory agency.
Yes.
Government
I
agency.
don't mean to make you uncomfortable, and I apologize for that.
I just want to clarify. You disagree with their interpretation.
Yes.
Okay, because we don't have them here to refute
I understand.
what you're saying.
And nor was I there when they wrote the letter refuting what I said. So I just want to be clear. For instance, in the meeting, Syed Rahman was also there. He actually, and there was some question about the word fingerprinting. We got that word from him. Quote, he said the DEC wanted to, quote, do some fingerprinting. That's why we gave you, the community members, the Summa canisters, unquote. I want you to be sure the phrase fingerprinting of contamination of the landfill correlating to community contamination came from the DEC. It was used twice in that meeting by Syed and also another time by David Gibb, also a representative from the DEC.
Did you respond to the DEC about the August 10th letter?
I just got the audio copy today. I wrote Dr. Gianni a letter today, which I just submitted, and we will be writing the DEC a letter as well. It'll be similar to the one.
Copy of that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Would you like to be CC'd on that? Yes, it'll be very similar to the one you have. We'll be getting shortly. Okay. Bottom line, the DEC reported to us in that meeting air quality data from, for instance, January 8th, 2016, where there was 1.1 parts per billion of benzene in the air at Frank P. Long School, outside. Also, January 25th, 1.7 ppb. January 29th, 3.3 ppb of benzene. Also, you need to know the difference is when we took those air samples, the teacher and community members, they were taken during odor events. They were not taken on a beautiful, crystal clear summer day when the wind is 3 miles per hour and the heating season has not yet begun. These samples were taken during odor events when the windows in the buildings were closed, and they were also taken outside, so I guess the windows don't matter. But they correlated to benzene in the landfill, which the sample was taken on January 25th at 2016, which is the date, and the landfill at 24 parts per billion. The reason I'm telling you this is to just understand that these sewer canisters were developed to be taken during odor events. Your results, which I'm not contesting, were not taken during odor events. So I feel you do not have a complete, comprehensive picture. It's as though you would watch a 2-minute promo.
It's happening to all of us. Hold on.
Well, I can speak on this.
Well, it might not be fair to be able to do that.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, just, hold on. Scott's on his way.
That was a terrible
You want to just take this one?
I think we need some better microphone equipment.
Is that better? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to talk quick so this one doesn't go out. Okay, testing.
Yeah.
This one's going too. Yeah, really can talk quick. Anyway, you don't have a complete picture. It would be as if you watched the movie Titanic for the first 2 minutes and said, my God, the movie's about a beautiful ship on a beautiful cruise. It's not a full, complete, comprehensive picture before you. Also, on the audio tape, you can clearly hear us ask, what do you mean by VOCs? Can you be specific? The answer is yes. We largely mean BTEX, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. But in specific, we're really referring to benzene. That's what we were told. The community members asked at the end of the meeting, or actually one actually stood up and said, we are so thrilled to be able to, the first time, be in a meeting where the DEC has directly correlated VOCs and benzene coming from the landfill and being responsible for air pollution in the meeting, in the community. And I want you to be very clear too. Throughout the tape, you will hear the DEC say, what we want you to know, it's not just the landfill, that there are other contributors of benzene, such as automobiles and other VOC sources. But we found a direct correlation between the landfill and the test results in 3 locations: Martha's Park, Frank P. Long School, and the Brookhaven Fire Department. They did say repeatedly there are other sources, but the reason they used the canisters during odor events at the landfill and the other 3 locations was to correlate, in their word, fingerprint the results, not our word. That's why we used it last month. I've never been so happy to have a recording of a meeting I've been in my life. I just want to leave you with that and just let you know that we understand again and appreciate all the time and effort and the stress you've been put through on this. Our concern is that, the landfill is not just a burden for the school. The landfill is a burden for the entire community. The children need to be safe in school, but they also need to be safe at home. So the landfill is the problem, not you or management of the school. Our objective has always been to provide you and the community and government with objective scientific information. And that's why we work with you teachers and the community members that embarked on this journey 5 years ago, was to obtain this data would not exist without the involvement of those teachers and other community members that are sitting in the back. That's why this data exists. So thank you so much for your effort. I wanted to clear the record.
Just before you step away, could you just give me the date of that meeting again? You said February, was it 2016 or 17?
It was 2016. During a winter storm.
It was during a storm. Did you have the attendees mentioned in the documentation?
Is there somebody in the train? No, you're after her. I'm not? I think so.
You guys, but not the community members. And I can provide that.
Would you please? Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you for your time. Followed by Ms. Skelly.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, you do such a good job. You really do. We're so fair and very considerate of everyone, and I applaud you and the rest of the board. I have a quick question. Is it true, this is yes or no, that the BTA was not allowed to choose one of the people, the operations, the companies that were going to do the testing, that They were shut out. They asked to give their opinion, who they wanted, and they were shut out. Is that true, sir?
Oh,
That's not true.
Jay, Joe.
Okay, fine, then I had misinformation. Then I take that back. Okay. And I'll go back to my meeting with the town board. I wonder if there are any town board members here, as Mr. Romaine said there would be. No, shucks. Okay.
Interesting.
Well, Mr. Romaine says that when he was first elected and in place, that he made the decision not to grow the town dump. And we're supposed to be very happy about that and stay with as it is. Not true, not good. He said 7 years it will be closed. 7 years, Mr. Romaine, I'd like you to send your grandchildren to Frank Long School or have your children teach there, because in 7 years we'll have more statistics. That is so totally unfair. I also want to tell you about my experience in Frank Long, which I have. You know, I was an assistant principal there from about 1991, 92, and I retired in 98. The situation was horrendous. Mr. Romaine referred to this wonderful the report, Frank P. Long, that the teachers had great attendance. I watched while one special ed teacher was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She dragged herself to school every day. She finished the year. It's because you have dedication like that that those attendance reports look so well. It's thanks to our teachers, I'll tell you. As a matter of fact, in my stay there were 2 other teachers were diagnosed, and we had, let's see, a special education teacher. There was 2 special education teachers. Ms. Palermo was kind of after I retired, but it was ongoing. I think the fact that there's no correlation between ovarian cancer or uterine cancer is because we don't have the instrumentation to measure it. We don't have the statistics to measure it. In 5 years we'll know, but in 5 years it's going to be a little late. Okay. I just want to end at, let's see. I would wish you would take another look. I know that it's tough to close the school. I doubt that you're going to make that decision to do it, and it saddens me because I think that all our parents want, all our teachers want, is to go into school that is safe and they can send their children there and not be afraid of disease. I truly.
Oh. Good job, Tony.
Do you have that question?
Teacher gave me the wrong
Who wants
answer.
to stand in for All right, so then you're on. You or Joe?
I didn't want to get in more trouble.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to start by thanking you for giving me an opportunity to speak, and also to thank all of you for your tireless consideration of this, because I know firsthand how difficult any decision the board makes, and I am absolutely confident that you are giving it more than its fair thought with regard to the safety of our children and our staff. I want to thank the teachers for attending school tirelessly, probably some days when they don't feel well, and having a phenomenal attendance rate, because that speaks to the education that we offer our students in South Country. I am a parent of many kids that have gone to the district, actually 5 who have attended Frank P. Long successfully, and I have one that's entering there in September. My son, who has since graduated, suffered from migraines his entire life. Can I say that it's from Frank P. Long? No, it could be because I live 1.5 miles from the dump, and the other 18 hours a day that he wasn't at Frank P. Long, and the other 15 years of his life that he wasn't at Frank P. Long, he had to live in my house, which probably breathes the same air that Frankie Long breathes, high school breathes, Brookhaven breathes, even district office breathes. So to say that Frankie Long is a sick school is an unfair statement. We're a sick community. We need to do something. But to lay that burden on our Board of Education is unfair. It is completely unfair to expect the Board of Education to close a school based on an issue that's community-based. And we can't even say it's based on the dump. It could be based on Sunrise Highway. Hey, there's correlation to cancer and the creosote that the railroad sunk into our ground. We live on a giant aquifer. We suck up chemicals all day long in our drinking water. So to put this responsibility on a school district is completely unfair. I don't believe students should be sick. I don't believe teachers should be sick. But to change the course of the education, to increase class sizes, to create a greater divide in our community between the haves and the have-nots. Because there are members of our community who will make the choice not to send their students their children to Frankie Long, and they can afford to send them to private schools. I cannot afford to send my child to private school. She will go to Frankie Long, and she will be taught by phenomenal teachers that are going to attend there, because that's what they do, because they're committed to the students here. And I hope, as a community, partially as a school district, that we look for a solution to the toxicity that we live in on Long Island, not just in South Country, not just in Brookhaven, but on Long Island. Thank you.
Palermo, you're going to speak to the question of Mr. Shelton. You know the answer?
Okay, so Blanche, Mrs. Jackson wanted to know, has any other studies been done since that 1993 study that you mentioned?
No.
Officially about cancer
No.
incidents in the community?
No.
Only the one that's currently being undertaken.
Yeah, right. And that's because the data that the teachers sent
Yep.
to the state.
That's right.
The Department of Health feels the need to be responsive to the number of people from a particular location raising the issue, which, I mean, all you need to do is be at this meeting and see how many people are laser focused on the issue. So that's what they do.
And that's a planned thing that we are planning to do. If the state doesn't do it officially, we are walking the streets and creating that. But just for quick, that was in 1993. Our first cancer case did not happen until 1998 when Mary Chambers died. And then after that, it was 2 years, every 2 weeks. That needs to be, the study happened, Mary died. We never made the connection until people started dying. So, getting diagnosed. So, I just want you to know that.
Thank you, Mr. Palermo. Joyce Maresco, followed by Richard Russo.
First, I'm going to apologize. I'm not a public speaker. I hate being in the highlight, but I'm here because I have a serious question for the environmental science representative. It's regarding hydrogen sulfide, and I believe a lot of people here have issues with the type of testing that was done and the testing that wasn't done. So my question is in regard to hydrogen sulfide, but really kind of goes towards all of the testing that was done. So here's a little synopsis. Hydrogen sulfide is a harmful and toxic compound that is colorless, flammable gas that can be identified by its rotten egg odor. This invisible gas, heavier than air, travels easily along the ground and builds up in low-lying, confined, and poorly ventilated areas. Dr. Neil Carmen, Clean Air Director for the Lone Star chapter of the Sierra Club, published a study that concluded growing children are more vulnerable because they breathe more rapidly, taking in significantly more pollution per pound of body weight than adults. The EPA set the safe exposure level at 0.00014 parts per billion to protect sensitive people such as children and the elderly. Now, I received a report, a draft report from the landfill, and I'm really confused as to why there were only 10 canisters placed at Frankie Long over a 20-month period to detect hydrogen sulfide, and were only on and working for 2 minutes over a 20-month period. 2 minutes, not 2 minutes each, 2 minutes total for 10 canisters. Now, the question is, how does that give us accurate data when in January 2017, February 2017, and March, and possibly even December, because I don't have the data in front of me, cell 5 at the landfill, hydrogen sulfide monitoring produced a result of 21,000 parts per million, 7,000 parts per million, and 1,300 parts per million. That is just, and those, I don't have the data in front of me other than those. They were taken between 50 feet and 100 feet away from the landfill as to wherever, wherever their specific location was. So, can you explain to me how 2 minutes worth of testing over a 21 period, we're missing huge amounts of data?
Well, obviously I didn't coordinate that study, but I've been party to a discussion about that study. The purpose of that study was to identify the migration of families off-site from the landfill to the surrounding neighborhood, including the areas that the neighborhoods you just mentioned. Speaking to the issue that Adrienne wrote about this idea of fingerprinting, that study was intended to correlate concentrations on the landfill and tie them to concentrations within the neighborhood. Hence, only a short-term sample so that you don't get dilution over a longer period of time from periods when you don't have that correlation.
I won't even be asking him any
So
questions.
it's a different
He doesn't know. He's not going to tell you anything.
concern than the health-based concerns that we've been evaluating and talking about here. And that's what I do.
I wouldn't trust a word that guy said.
But if
Horse and ponies.
And taking a very distinct picture in a very small period of time to make a very direct correlation.
I understand that, but when you have 3 months worth of data where it shows, I believe, 14 days or 21 days out of that 3-month period, the hydrogen sulfide results were extremely above the range that they should be, which is 0, I believe, to 30 parts per million. When they're extremely high, and you're doing a testing over a 20-month period that only has 2 minutes worth of data, but you've got 5 or 6 days a month where one VOC is extremely high, how can you say that there is no problem? How can you say that that school is not being effective?
To the numbers that you were quoting for the 12,000, 8,000, that's what led to the DEC issuing a directive to the town to install the 20 gas extraction wells because there was too much migration of H2S off-site. There was too much concentration of H2S on-site with the risk of it migrating off-site. They wanted it collected before it was released. So they had to cap an additional 7% of landfill.
So there was a problem. That was the landfill.
Okay, so right now, do you have any data that can tell us what, on those days that there was 21,000 parts per million released from the landfill on that particular day, can you tell us what the result was at Frankie Law? And can the school tell us how many kids went to the nurse's office that day? Because I'll tell you, I work in a school, and if a kid has a headache, the teachers say, just put your head down, you're okay.
I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Joyce Morris.
Joyce, you're raising a very good question about the status of the landfill today and our evaluation of its impact on the community and the school versus the landfill that existed when it was built in the 80s and in the 90s, when it was not, I'll just say, the same neighbor that it is today. Now, I'm not here to defend the town of Brookhaven or the landfill. It doesn't really matter except to say that a landfill that was built in 1974 and started operation and opening more and more cells.
I haven't even begun to talk about that. I'm talking specifically about a day, 14 days or
impossible.
in the winter, when the testing was supposed to be done in the winter with the doors closed.
Well, hold on a second.
And right here, it's
that question has been lingering in the room, and I appreciate you raising that. The July testing, somebody speculated the windows were open. The windows were closed, and the unit's fully functional and operational. And what that means is that the fan was on, the outside air damper was open the same way it operates in January, February, March. The only difference was that the coil that rests inside the unit ventilator didn't have hot water going through it. It's the only difference. When the windows were closed, the building evaluated as if it were January, February, February, or March. And
how's that possible?
Under the stress of not being maintained like it would be.
Did he have the heat on? Because if he didn't, then it's not the same.
Yeah. So
No,
I
I
would
mean-
have started questioning, for instance, results like particulate, if they come back elevated because of that question about stress. But there is no doubt in my mind that the evaluation that took place during that week in July mimics the conditions of the building in January. February,
Well,
March.
mimicking isn't good enough for $116,000.
What does the key
I want actual if I'm paying that kind of money.
Please tell me what the difference is between the. Then why do you ask that question? I just explained to you that the only difference.
It's not the same.
It's the same. The building envelope was the same. The fresh air being brought in was the same. And the function of the fans were the same.
Ms. Wilkerson.
The temperature of the building, for all intents and purposes, was the same in July as it was.
It's not the same.
Would be when it's heated in January, February, March, by a difference of about 5 degrees.
And that's my question. Is the testing,
There's one person asking questions every month.
I truly believe that the testing has been done so minimally that we don't have a clear picture of what really is going on with that school. And
I'd like to address that.
as many
That's
people, I
that's
have
a
to send
reasonable
my
statement.
son there in September.
That's a reasonable statement.
I went through one son who went through the whole sludge thing, and his friends all got violently ill, and that was before we knew all about this. And now, I'm a data-driven person, and I see, 30 seconds testing here, 2 second testing there.
Well, you're speaking to that different issue at the town, but the question of the evaluation of 69 data points in a school building that's 92,000 square feet. I can tell you, day in and day out, this is what I do, that if we were to write a work plan to submission to the DEC, they would require 10%, 7 to 10 samples to evaluate a building like that. That's number one. Number two, the VOC testing, although some people harp on the 1 hour testing, occurred over a 7.5 hour period the day it took place. We did the sampling in groups of 10. We started at 8:25 in the morning, we finished at 3:07. So we evaluated a 7.5 hour period with 69 samples. That's a sample for every 1,500 square feet in that building. It's an extraordinary number of samples.
Over what kind of time frame?
On July 21st.
One day.
Well, I mean,
One day.
you know, I understand. The flip side is.
One day. That is my point to the board. It's one day. I wish I had that paperwork with me. Brookhaven Landfill data sheet saying that 21,000 parts per million of hydrogen sulfide was released into the air around this community where we're all living. And the fact that they say hydrogen sulfide is extremely bad. And one day of testing does not give any person on this board and any person in this room shouldn't make you feel better. Because it's one day of testing. When the data from the landfill shows that there's a bigger picture. Now, what is the resolution to that? More extensive testing. I think everybody will agree. More extensive testing.
Joyce, with regards to hydrogen sulfide,
That's just one. I don't have the paperwork.
But just to your point, the DEC on June 23rd installed a little rock, takes a sample every 10 minutes. It's not there.
You can go. You don't have to. You can watch it.
Hourly seasons.
Tell you if anything exciting happens.
I mean, facing the direction of the landfill.
And where is that data?
It's in the hands of the DEC, but they shared with us the first 4 weeks of that data. I addressed that presentation.
Okay, and then you just missed that. I'm sorry.
It's an asterisk under the hydrogen sulfide slide.
Board responsible
Okay.
The board doesn't have more questions.
One day of testing there, one day of testing.
Shame on them.
This study is done by the DEC.
Chris is afraid to open his mouth. Wendy killed me.
Thank you very much.
So glad she made
They
this
do
movie.
know that,
I know. Good job.
Good job.
Followed by Stuart Pointer. You back up again, Stuart? Yes? We're way over 15 minutes. I have 4 more cards. Shall we just push on through?
Push on. Push on. before.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm going to share a little bit in this time, and I have a couple of questions for Representative from Environment. First off, I'm fairly new to this community. I bought a house here a couple of years ago. My daughter is going to be going to Frank P. Long probably 4 years from now. So I'm here not necessarily as an immediate or acute representative of what may be going on, but looking at a period of time and what may happen and what the decision comes forward from the board and how that may impact my family. And to also share with you, I am also an educated scientist. So I also try to take an approach on things in a very objective way, regardless of my emotional tie to the situation that's going on. And there's a couple of questions that as a scientist concern me. One is I would ask is, you know, when we look at the presentation that was put up here, and if I was in the last one, there was a statement that said, that was clarified by yourself, that said testing results for volatile organic compounds were not in the testing that was shared in prior test results, and you clarified to say that if I remember correctly, that they weren't in prior test results because they were not they were not detected, right?
Correct.
So someone who does root cause analysis on a regular basis, one of the questions that I ask myself is, when I look at the testing results that you have here over the last 3 sample points that you have, is the bigger question, which is, what is the probability that things are being added to the environment that are now being detected, and because they don't reach threshold or guideline limits, what's the approach and the fact that they're still being introduced now when they weren't introduced in the past? And then the second question is, what's the probability that they're coming from areas outside of the landfill? So where are the other industrial environments that these volatile organic compounds can be coming from, other than the landfill? And there's a probability of that, don't get me wrong. I'm a firm believer, and I want to clarify one thing. You know, there's no such thing as good or bad data. There's data in our interpretation of it. And I'm a very firm believer of that. I also understand.
That's why I interrupt you, so I don't lose track of your question.
Sure.
Okay, just restate your first question.
Yeah, so my first question is, with compounds now being